In this video, I'll be sharing with you a requested tutorial from my group on how to cut this simple flea dress. So to start, I'm going to use the full length of this pattern paper as the total length of my dress. Now, I'll start by marking the shoulder to bust, which might not be the actual measurement, shoulder to under bust, shoulder to waist, and then place your tape and measure 7 inches to get your hip. If it's a much taller person, please use 8 inches for that measurement. Now, I'll place my ruler and I'll draw out a straight line on all those lines. I'll connect it all the way straight. Now, after marking this, the next step I'm going to take is to go ahead, label it as my shoulder to bust, under bust, waist, blouse length, hip point, and then dress length. So I'll go ahead to mark my shoulder divided by 2 and I'll come down by 1 inch. After marking that, I'll mark a basic neckline of 3 inches for this part. For the depth, I'll use 3 inches also. Now, you can decide to use the 3 inches for the depth or use 2.5. From that point, I'll extend it to the shoulder for my shoulder slant. In your chest line, you'll mark your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5. Mine is actually 7 inches and I placed the ruler and marked a straight line there. So after marking this, I'll place my ruler and I'll mark my shoulder divided by 2 at the chest line and I'll connect this all the way up. After connecting, I'm going to divide what I have here into 2 equal parts and mark ½ inch. Here, I'll mark my bust circumference divided by 4, connect this all the way up, and I'll be connecting this to the chest line. After marking this, we'll now insert our measurement. For this dress is a free dress, so I will mark my bust circumference divided by 4, then go ahead to add ease to your dress. You can add 1 to 2 inches ease and then your sewing allowance. So this totally depends on how free you want it to be. So for this pattern, you don't really need your under bust measurement except you want to mark that. Mark your waist circumference divided by 4 and add the ease that you want. Add your sewing allowance. Gown length, I'll mark my hip circumference divided by 4. Then you now decide how free you want it to be. You can add extra 4 inches to 6 inches after marking your hip circumference divided by 4 at that point. So go ahead to mark this and check if you're okay with what you have. Then you go ahead to connect all the way to the lower part. Now I'll blend out the hip area so that it will not be bent. It will not like have a sharp edge at that point. So after this, I'll be cutting this out and I'll use it to draft out the back pattern of this dress. I'll also use this to cut out my back pattern. So if you're cutting directly on your fabric, you don't necessarily need to cut the full length of this dress. I'll be explaining at the ending part of this video. So for the back, I marked a zipper allowance of 1.5 to 2 inches, and for the back neckline, use 3 inches by 1.5 and I will connect. Now what I'll do is to go ahead to trace out this pattern all the way to the armhole and to the sides of this pattern. After tracing out, I'll go ahead to place my pattern and mark where I have my hip and my waistline. Now at the waist, I'll come in by ½ inch and I'll place my tape and I will slant it all the way to the hip. I'll also repeat this at the other side of my pattern and I'll connect this all the way up. After connecting, I'll just go ahead to cut this out. So if you're cutting this with a pattern paper and you want to like replace it, you want to like place it on your main fabric and cut out, that is when you cut the full length of the dress on the pattern paper. But if you're not cutting on the pattern paper and you're cutting on your fabric, you're not going to cut the total length of this dress on your fabric because there's a joining at the lower part of this dress, right? So I'll fold in my zipper allowance and I'll place. Now what I'll do is to go ahead to place where I want the opening at the neckline of this dress to start, right? So I'll measure like 3 to 3.5 inches and mark. Then at the upper part of the neckline, come in by half. This is that opening you have, and then slant it down. So I'll be cutting this out, right? I'll go ahead to cut it out. Then after I'm done cutting this out, what I'm going to do is to go ahead to place it. So I'll be explaining if you're cutting with a pattern paper or if you're cutting directly with your fabric at this point. But before that, for the neckline design, you're going to mark at least 1.5 to 2 inches. You're going to actually add another fabric on top of it, which you're going to use and make this design all the way to this point. You place on it. You can even go ahead to top stitch it or join it to the neckline and flip it, right? So whichever one that is okay for you, use that. Now for the lower part of this dress, you notice that we have a joining at that part. Now place your tape and mark where you want it to start. So if you want it to start here, go ahead to mark that. I'm going to mark and I will place my ruler and I will connect. So after I'm done connecting at this point, so I'll be cutting this off. This is if you're using a pattern paper to cut, you're going to first of all cut this out and place and trace. But if you're not cutting with a pattern paper, what you do is mark the full length of your dress on the fabric. Now place your tape at the lower part and measure where you want it to stop before having that joining. Then you will now mark that line and cut the upper part only, right? Then leaving the lower parts aside. All you have to do to replace the lower side is go ahead to measure what will be added to the gown to complete it. So whatever you have, you're going to cut what is more than the actual size of this lower part, right? Because if you notice, we have a design, the lower part slightly looks fuller than that of the upper part of this dress. Probably you place the design on the lower part of this dress, and just like I said, whatever you're cutting for the lower part might be slightly bigger than that of the front, so that by the time you add it, you have that little ruffle or slight gathers or designer at the lower part of this dress.